The CGI podcast is all about successful artists and designers sharing their personal stories and experiences to inspire you to take action, learn from others, and apply the shared wisdom to your own journey as you chase your creative potential. This is the CGI podcast. When I had the opportunity to sit down and speak with Esben Oxholm today, I wanted to dive into something that we all fantasize about, which is being able to do what you enjoy as a hobby or for fun as a full-time job. And I've seen Esben more or less create this business, his freelance business, from nothing into the reputable service it is today. I wanted to talk with him kind of about the steps he took to get there and some of the behind the scenes stuff that we might not see on the surface, meaning all the work that's gone into it, but also how he's planned for success. And I learned that he's a little bit more meticulous than I thought. And it just goes to show that good planning and execution and a lot of patience will take you where you want in the end. So this episode is all about turning a passion into a business with CG Artist Esben Oxholm. So I really enjoyed it, and I think you guys will as well. Please take a minute to leave a review and subscribe on iTunes. It means the world to me. Again, thanks for your time. Let's dive in. This is episode 3 with CG artist Esben Oxholm. As a skilled freelancer, he offers premium services such as 3D modeling, rendering, animation, and retouching for those who want top-notch presentations. He uses his background of lighting design and engineering to augment his design and rendering services to create stunning visuals. Additionally, Esben is very active in the online community, offering a large collection of educational material. In a short period of time, he's gained the respect of many within the CG community, as well as building a brand and a freelance business. Esben, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Will. Thanks for the nice introduction.
My pleasure. I appreciate your time for sure.
No problem.
So, as a CG artist, what is, if I can ask, like, what is your day-to-day or your week-to-week? What is the patterns you've seen so far in the type of work that you're doing?
As far as the type of work, it's mostly product illustrations, product renderings for different purposes, mostly websites, but also like different brochures and manuals and stuff like that.
Got it. So sounds like some form of visual communications, but when somebody wants something that looks professional and or clean or something to more or less advertise their product, their service, their business, they're going to you for that?
Yeah, exactly. It's like instead of going to a product photographer like they would do in the old days, now they have the CAD files. So a lot of customers starts to see the benefit of doing it in 3D instead of traditional photography.
Sure. While we're on that, like what are some of those benefits, if you don't mind?
I mean, it's easier to get a consistent look from product to product. So if they have a new product coming out, let's say every year, then I can use the same setup, the same keyshot file, to get the exact same lighting and same materials, and then get the same look on images that are years apart, which is something that can be hard to do with product photography, I guess, or at least more not so convenient because you have to set up the studio the exact same way and use the exact same lighting and stuff.
Exactly. That makes sense. Sure. And as far as, so that's, from a consistency standpoint, but I assume too, like from a cost standpoint, there's got to be benefits at some point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also in terms of flexibility, I mean, I had a customer, I was doing like a lock on a shoot case, and I did some renderings with a black shoot case, and then their customer suddenly wanted the shoot case to be red. And then I could jump straight ahead into the keyshot file and change the color to red and output the exact same settings, the exact same lighting, just the color changed. And that would have been tough to do with product photography, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. When it comes,
you save money that way as well.
Sure. Whenever you're working with prototypes or props or something like that. And I imagine too, the larger the object, the more efficient it becomes. Like if you're doing something that can't be photographed, period, or something that can't be photographed within a studio setting, that type of thing too, like definitely seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's cool. And so how long have you been doing this? I mean, this is fairly fresh for you, fairly new?
Yeah, I have been full-time freelancing for 2.5 months now. Spent a couple of years doing it part-time while studying, where I like build up my brand and my network. And before that, I've been doing renderings for 3 or 4 years before that.
Right. So even though you're new to the full-time gig, let's make it clear to anyone who's listening, the work that has allowed you to do this full-time, that background, that homework and all that stuff, that's been done over the past few years. It's not been like an overnight thing.
No, not at all. I mean, it's 5 years of daily renderings almost.
Very cool. That's good. That's good to know for anyone listening who's kind of interested and maybe has thought about doing, flipping a switch and trying to do something full-time on their own. As far as, now since we're talking a little bit about like what you did before your current freelance gig, I know that you've studied, you did a bachelor's degree of product development and engineering, I think, as well as you now have a master's in lighting design, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool. So now I personally have some other questions around your study as far as the lighting design goes, because that's something I don't even know what that is, and I'm genuinely curious. But as far as the last, like both of the degrees you have, do you mind sharing a little bit of kind of why you chose to study those items and how you chose that path, basically?
Yeah. I mean, right out of high school, I like to do creative stuff, and I also like the more technical stuff. So I thought that a degree in product design engineering sort of combined both of a bit of both worlds. And while doing that, I came across the concept of doing 3D renderings, because that was something that we did with the product designs to present the products that we designed. And then after graduating that bachelor degree, I got a job as a mechanical design engineer at a company called Velux, doing like rooftop windows, where I also did a bit of rendering for the concept development phases and stuff like that. And I felt that I enjoyed more doing the visualizations than doing the actual product design. So I decided to stop as a mechanical design engineer, and then they started up this education with lighting design in Copenhagen that I thought sounded quite interesting, and maybe something that I could use to use in my renderings or something like that. I mean, basically, I just wanted to try out something new, and the plan was actually also to start freelancing while doing that education. So it sort of all came together when I did that.
Okay, that's interesting. So, and it's funny because I can fully relate to your experience when talking about the product design or product development area. And then like, oh, there's a tool or a process that you got exposed to during that you really latched onto and you really liked. And that's cool. As far as the next step, and I mean, that's pretty ambitious. Like, I mean, I don't know very many people who start pursuing a master's degree and then think, oh yeah, I'm going to start freelancing too while I do this. Like that's also pretty ambitious, and that's pretty cool too. So, now as far as that goes, like, as somebody who's never heard of lighting design, what is it? Do you mind kind of summarizing that for me?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are different directions of lighting design, but the one that I studied is one that combines architectural lighting design, so lighting for buildings and bridges and also interior spaces, combines that with the media technology, so like new lighting technologies and interactive stuff, and how you can program lighting. So it's sort of a mix how you can use architectural lighting and do it in a innovative way. So it becomes interactive and a living thing instead of just a dead lighting.
Sure, that makes sense. And it also sounds like it's more of kind of an experiential thing too, not just light to illuminate a space, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, how you can use the lighting to shape the rooms support different activities going on in the same room and so forth.
That makes sense. So how did that end up influencing what you do now as somebody who's primarily in the visualization or the rendering field?
Yeah, I think there's no like direct impact, but I think that I have been accustomed to seeing light in a different way, and understand how much it can influence, for example, a space, and how much you can use lighting to shape an object and create moods. And I think that is something that I can do in the renderings, although it's a bit different thing, lighting an object instead of a room, but some of the thoughts that you have to go through is the same.
That makes sense. As far as your work that I've seen, I'm very much accustomed to the work that you produce, and I can say at least that lighting is definitely a strong suit of yours, because when you're in a 3D program, people have this urge or tendency to just light everything, every surface, and
yeah, exactly.
You then kind of lose either your drama or you lose your focal point or whatever it is. But that is something that I can tell that you've done really well. And
thanks.
Sure. I mean, you say there's no direct relationship or correlation, but I do think that is definitely something that probably subconsciously just comes more naturally to you, because you've kind of dissected what lighting can be used for and how it can be used. And then I think it just helps you make those decisions on the fly without even thinking about it, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think you're right on that there's a lot of things happening unconsciously because of this education, but it's hard for myself to see it or like understand what people who doesn't have studied lighting for 2 years sees lighting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's like, as somebody who's gone through a formal education on product design, the same thing, whether, there are just these concepts or these ideas, even down to observation of how things work, and picking up on things like narrative and why something, giving a purpose behind each decision you make. Those are some things that you get used to that. And every once in a while, it's like, I'll catch myself saying something and I'll be like, oh, I guess that's not that obvious to everybody. We all come from a unique set of experiences, and then that is kind of what helps shape what we do. So,
yeah. I
mean, I guess there's definitely some of your education coming into play here, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think so too.
So as far as that, so as far as your education goes, I know today there's a whole lot of, if you don't mind, there's a lot of people who are pretty critical of formal education and kind of negative. I don't know if you've read a whole bunch about that, but
not too much,
okay,
to be honest.
Well, that's good. That's great. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of criticism in, especially in the creative fields, where people are like, do you pay to go to art school or do you not? But again, I guess this may differ. I'm not entirely sure how it works over there, but at least in the U.S., post-secondary education is really expensive.
Okay, yeah.
So
it's free over here, so.
Oh, that's fantastic! Yeah, so
yeah, it is.
That's a no-brainer. I mean, if I was out there, I definitely see the benefit that you saw in doing a master's degree in lighting design. So that's cool. Mm-hmm. All right, well, that's awesome. So okay, you went to school first. You got familiar with product design, and then you went ahead and did lighting design. And now, did you actually end up start doing your freelance on the side while you were studying your master's degree as planned, or did it become too busy, or how did that work?
It it worked out quite well. I started slowly with my freelancing, and I think that when you're starting out, always slow in the beginning. It's hard to get the first customer and then get recurring customers. So in the beginning, it came together fine. I had time for the education while I started to build up a network and gain the first clients, and then get referrals and get some more clients, and build on top of that. So I think, at least for me, it was good to have something else to do while starting up the business. Otherwise, I think I would have been like, what's the word? I mean, when there's not too much to do in the freelancing business, it was good that I had my education to focus on, to take some thoughts away from the freelancing.
Sure, and
if that makes sense.
It does, and I've been there personally, and I know that when things are slow in the beginning, and you're trying to rely on that, especially if you're expecting to make money on it, that is stressful. It can be
exactly.
It can be a big challenge, and when things don't happen fast enough, I do think that people tend to get scared and shift their focus and go find a job that is steady paying, and even if it's not something they care that much about, just because it's hard to stomach that in the beginning.
Yeah, and it's also something that I can feel now that I'm full-time freelancing. I think way more about when I get a new customer, and if I get new customers in the future, and if the money will come in or not. And I didn't think about that when I had the study as well.
That makes sense. Yeah, and so let's get into that a little bit, if you don't mind, because I think it's an interesting topic, and I think a lot of people, today we have the technology to connect us with anyone, anywhere, anytime, and all of the sudden that allows people who previously could not see a way to do what they enjoy, like their passion or their hobbies, as a career, because maybe the only studios they could do that at were too far away. They didn't have the money to get there, or they didn't know how to make that move. Anything like that, like all those excuses kind of go away when we can connect with people. And so I think now more than ever, people are going ahead and they are freelancing, or they are consulting from their home, whether it's their full-time gig, or it's just a supplementary income, or it's just something they enjoy. But I think this is a really big topic. And if you don't mind, I'd love to get into a little bit more about kind of your journey with kind of becoming a full-time freelancer, and what you've experienced so far.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. And and I'm going to bring a little bit of story in here too, because I got connected with you. I think I met you online probably a couple of years ago. I know.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was in the Keyshot forum as a Keyshot user, and
probably.
I remember. I think one of the first times, maybe when doing some sort of kind of short little rendering contest that you were doing, you were kind of helping to organize those in kind of a community building sort of way on the Keyshot forum, which is cool. And I think I've seen your work and you grow as an artist and a designer, and it's really cool. Like you've got a website now with a bunch of content on it. Your social media channels have kind of blown up lately. It sure seems. So when you got done with school, did you use the time when you were at school, or when you were studying, did you use that time to build a plan, or was your focus on that, and then all of a sudden when you were done, you just said, okay, time to sit down, make a plan? Kind of take us through that process, if you don't mind, of how that transition went.
Yeah, sure. I did create a plan for what I should do when I became full-time, so I knew what to fill up my day with. And I did that while I did my master thesis. So I mean, I planned out, and this is something that I'm actually very strict about or organizational about. I mean, I said that I need to do one tutorial a week, and I need to post something on Instagram each day. I need to send out a newsletter once a month, and also post something on LinkedIn like every second week, to get my name out there and get that to work as a kind of marketing for my services.
So you have a content publishing schedule, basically, right?
Yeah.
And how hard has it been, or how easy? I mean, depending on how it's been for you, how difficult has that been to maintain so far?
It has been both. I mean, a bit mixed, I would say. It was tough in the beginning to do a tutorial each week because that was something new to me, to speak or teach while also doing stuff on the screen. I had a hard time like talking and doing stuff at the same time. But by doing it every week, I'm getting better and better at it, or it gets easier for me at least. So now it's kind of a good experience for me to create a tutorial, and I look forward to do it. When as before, it was more dreadful for me, and I had to drag myself to do it. But posting something on Instagram, I mean, I don't do it each day, but I have in my head that I have to do it pretty often.
Sure.
So yeah, but every time I do something in Keyshot or Photoshop, or do something creative, which I do quite a lot, then I just go ahead and post it, and don't overthink it too much. Just post whatever I'm doing or what I'm experimenting with.
That's fantastic. And I know that that's something that I've struggled with in the past, where it's like, oh, you kind of put the pressure on yourself, and you kind of ask yourself, is this good enough, or is this cool, or whatever? And I think as soon as you start thinking about your audience on those channels, instead of just kind of exploring as a creative person, I think that does make it a little bit harder if you're trying to always cater to somebody.
Yeah.
So that's cool. And as far as I guess I should have asked you this a little bit earlier, but what are the primary tools that you're using that you're in regularly, that you're using, software or anything else?
Yep, I use Modo for modeling, sometimes also rendering, and I also use it for animation stuff. And then I use Keyshot for the rendering part and also animation. A lot of Photoshop work for post-processing the still images that I do, and Adobe After Effects for post-processing the animations. And then I also use Premiere to edit my tutorials. Okay,
sure. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got your tools that you like to use, and and I'm always a little bit curious about this, like, did you choose those for one reason or another, or are they kind of they're just the first ones you really dived into, and therefore those are your main tools now, or you know, how did you end up using those tools in particular?
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with the Keyshot as a rendering engine. In the past I had used 3ds Max and both Mental Ray and V-Ray before trying Keyshot, but I never really took off as a rendering artist with those softwares. I don't know why, but when I tried Keyshot, I mean, yeah, it just became fun in some ways, because it was so easy to get it off the ground and get something out.
So you weren't, just due to the ease of use, you found that you were logging more hours, you were getting better results. Is that kind of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
And for After Effects, I have not used any other editing software like that. I mean, it's a part of the Adobe package, and yeah, I just had it. So it works fine for what I need it for. And in terms of what else? Oh yeah, Modo for polygon modeling. I have used Rhino in the past. used it on Mac, but then it wasn't beta for a long time, free beta, but then it started costing money, and I was like, okay, what else is out there? Because Rhino is cool for modeling, but it was sort of limited to that. So for just a small amount of extra money, I could get also a great rendering engine. I could get an animation software, and I could get a simulation software, and all of that inside Modo. So and it also had a good reputation for modeling, the modeling tools. So I went with that because of that.
Yeah, I've always been surprised at how well-rounded that package is, and kind of all of what it offers. I'm always a little bit surprised it's not more popular than it is, but it does seem to be gaining a little bit more over time, I guess, a little bit more usership. But that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. So those are your main tools, and you're now using those regularly for freelancing. You're also producing tutorials. You're producing regular content. So when you were finishing up your thesis, and you then decided to build a content schedule, you started to. Was that something that you tried to just start doing as soon as you could, or you just was that something you only had time for once you got done with your thesis, or how did that transition go?
Yeah, I had to wait till I was done with the thesis before I had time to do it. All the stuff that I wanted to do, I was like urging to do the stuff, but I also had to pay attention to my thesis if I wanted to end that well as well. So I planned everything out and was looking forward to getting full time to do that stuff.
Yeah, and so how much of the success of what you've done after you finish your thesis and your master's degree, how much of the success would you attribute to the planning and the kind of the time that you were forced to kind of put your actions on hold? Like, in my experience, that always, even though it can seem frustrating at the time, there's always a silver lining, and it seems to benefit you in the long run. Did you feel any of that?
I'm not sure if I understood the question.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Like, so I guess what I'm asking is, the time that you were still studying your lighting design, and you were coming up with these plans and these ideas of how you would spend your time after that was done. Was that time spent planning all that out? How beneficial was that, do you think?
I think it has been good, because I could hit the ground running from day one. And at least in my experience, when I started out full time, a lot of doubt come into your mind, and it can be tough to see things clear, I think. But because I had done all the planning, like with a distance, so I think it was easier to commit to those plans, because I know they were good plans. I think it was good to have it planned out on beforehand.
Okay. Yeah, and it sounds like too, when you're stressed out about something, again, that's like the whole unknown process of trying something, either whether it's starting your own business or becoming a freelancer or trying to do it full time. There's a lot of emotions that can kind of cloud some of the decisions, whether it's doubt or, I know I had experienced, some days it's like things are going fantastic and you feel unstoppable. And then the very next day you can feel like a total piece of crap,
Exactly.
And it's crazy that can happen so quickly. But so it sounds like being removed a little bit, so you didn't feel that urgency back when you were coming up with these ideas, that helped you kind of plan it more rationally.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool. Okay, so now as far as the tutorials, you produce a lot of content. Like, you've got a lot of tutorials. You've got Gumroad tutorials. You've got them on YouTube. You've got your Instagram that you've been doing a lot of work on. and as well as maintaining a really nice email list. So do you mind breaking down a little bit why you chose to commit to regularly publishing on each of those platforms, and kind of, well, we'll start with that, but I've got another couple follow-up questions on that.
Okay, so why I decided to commit to a schedule? I mean,
well,
and
more specifically, why an email list? Why?
Okay.
Why
Yeah.
tutorials? Like, what are why?
Okay. The why for the tutorials is twofold. One thing is that I have learned so much myself from free tutorials on YouTube, and I kind of want to give that back to the community, and I want to create the keyshot videos that I would have loved to be able to watch when I was learning keyshot. So yeah, giving tips away to other people learning keyshot. I think that's the one reason, and the other one is also to gain a sort of a following, or some getting people to know me for future stuff where I plan to do some more in-depth tutorials that will cost a few bucks. So sort of to gain an audience for that.
That makes sense. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the same for the newsletter. It's a newsletter where I post like 5 cool links to stuff on the web, like HDR eyes or models or stuff like that. That, I mean, I stumble upon them anyways, so I thought that I might as well collect them and send them out to people on a monthly basis, so they don't have, I mean, not everyone have the time to search the web for all those kind of things, but due to my work, I find them on a regular basis. So yeah,
that's awesome.
I might as well be nice and share it, and also gain some future audience for some future products.
Sure, that makes sense, and that's a great mindset to have. I mean, you know, there's the internet brings so many resources to the tips of our fingers that I think acknowledging that and being, you know, generous with how much you're willing to share is awesome. Now, as far as so you've created quite a bit of tutorials, and people then I know are probably looking up to you when it comes to wanting to learn how to do something. If they go, oh, I learned this from Esben, he probably knows how to do X, Y, and Z. Do you get requests for new tutorials fairly regularly?
Yeah. On the couple of first tutorials, there wasn't too much commenting and stuff like that, but now I get like 3 or 4 new requests for every tutorial that I post. So now I have a lot of topics to do, and it also gets like, it motivates me to do another tutorial, because I know that some person is actually asking for help on this topic.
That's right. That's really cool. It seems like it pulls the you know, the fact that you have to make a decision each week on what to do. It makes that a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Cool. And then as far as your email list, I know even myself personally, as I travel around for work a lot and I show people how to use Keyshot, that's my job. People bring up your email list. You may be surprised to know, like
that's
from all
cool.
over. Yeah, and I've gotten direct questions about like, oh, did you see the last email has been sent out? Blah, blah, blah. They're asking questions about it. That's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, where's your email list at now? I know in the past I've used them. I've tried to build them. It depends on what you're doing, but it can be really difficult. But it can also be it can be the difference between you know, a business taking off or being sustainable in the long run as well. How has your experience been with that?
Like, do you think of something specific, or?
Sorry,
I'm not sure.
That's
sorry.
okay. No. The audio cut out there for a little bit, so I'm gonna cut that anyway. I'll ask that again. So your current email list that you're using, that people are subscribed to, they're receiving little links and tips and communications from you. Has that been a difficult thing to build, or has it come pretty naturally, or has it been surprising in any way?
I think that not focusing on how many subscribers I gain has been a good thing. I mean, if that's all you care about, then it's going to be tough. And I think that, at least from what I've read and heard, that many people who build an email list is focusing on how many people they get to subscribe instead of focusing on the content. And I think that there was a time where I got a lot of subscribers, and now it has sort of flattened out a bit. But yeah,
I think
there's
that's
still a lot of people who want to get what I sent them.
That's great. And I think that's a great point that you bring up, which is just not just within email lists, but like every form of online activity we have now, there are metrics attached to it. There are numbers attached to it, whether it's likes or retweets or comments or views or whatever. And as much as that's nice, because it can help from a strategic standpoint, I do think it probably does more harm than good, because people do end up measuring the worth or the value of something they do based on that feedback. I know I've fallen into that plenty of times. It's like, I don't care how good you are at ignoring that. Like, we're all human, and positive reinforcement psychologically does a lot for us as humans. And so, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting topic, but
yeah, it is. I mean, I have also thought a lot of times if I should continue doing this email when the open rate it dropped a few percent from newsletter to newsletter. But I mean, then I think that there's still a lot of people who really get value from this, so I shouldn't care about how many people. I mean, if a few percent less open this month newsletter compared to the last one, it doesn't really matter at all.
Right. And I mean, honestly, one thing that I think helps too, that I always try to keep in mind is, like, I don't know if there's somebody who should be credited with this phrase, but I hear it time and time again, and it is an audience of one, which is basically refers to, if you try to create something really good and really valuable just for one person, it seems to help, because inevitably, just given the number of people we have on this planet, there are going to be many people who identify with that one person you're trying to make something really good for. And to your point, like, you're making tutorials you wish you had personally, and you know that if you came across these earlier in your journey, you would have gotten a lot of value from them. So even if it is just one person, I think that's a great thing to keep in mind. Well, that's cool.
True.
So back to a little bit, you've for your business, like we kind of now understand like how you got into it, and how you created a plan. You've got your content strategy, which seems to have been really helping quite a bit too. How has I think one of the biggest questions most people face, there's a few around here, but first and foremost, I think the number one question I've personally received as anyone asking this, because I used to do freelance in the past, and that was, how do you get work? How do you find a client? Do you mind sharing any of your experiences with that, or just general thoughts on the topic?
Yeah. I mean, my experience has been a bit different from what I hear from other freelancers, because I think that I had so much time in the beginning where I didn't care if I got a customer or not, or not that I didn't care, but it didn't mean that I had to go out of business if I didn't get a customer.
Right.
So I had time to get better at my skill and to pay attention to the customer that I had and put some extra hours into it without getting paid for it, and slowly starting building my network in that way. And it takes time to build up a network. But slowly you will get like recurring customers, and your previous customers will start to refer you to other customers. And as you put more things on your website and post it on LinkedIn or whatever, it will also start to get some traction, and maybe you will get some SEO benefit from that as well, and people will be able to start searching for you on YouTube or Google. So that has actually been my strategy, or it has been the way that it has worked out. I have never sent any cold emails or stuff like that. Just put things out on different places on the internet, my website, on YouTube and on LinkedIn, and then just starting to get my network to work that way.
That's really cool. And I think that that's an interesting point. I think, again, it seems like you've gone fairly quickly. Again, I know that we kind of established or made it clear that a lot of the work the foundational work you put in, which took multiple years, enabled you to do what you're doing now. However, it seems like since you've gone and flipped the switch to full-time and kind of focused your attention on that, it seems like things have gone fairly smoothly. Is that okay to say? Is that
yeah
okay?
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, then I really like your strategy, which sounds like create quality work, share what you're doing, increase your visibility.
Yeah.
And with that, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say that use a lot of different channels, so people will see your name and your stuff again and again and on different channels, because then they start to remember you as well.
Yep, that's a good point.
Instead of just focusing on one channel, for example. And yeah, also pay attention to where you get your customers from, because in the beginning I was posting all the same stuff on Facebook that I did on the other channels, but I have never gotten one job from Facebook. So, I mean, that's a thing to keep in mind also.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So, you're just keeping a mental tally, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you're keeping a strict record somewhere, but it sounds like you're paying attention to where the traffic that is paying the bills is coming from, and then you're probably trying to cater or tailor some of what you choose to share with them, or how you spend your time on different networks based on that feedback.
Yeah, exactly. I usually ask my customers where they got to know about me, and that way track how they found me.
Has any of their answers been surprising?
A few has come from Instagram, and that was actually quite surprising for me when they first came from there. I didn't really start my Instagram to get customers or anything. It was more like a place to get my stuff out. But people who are using Instagram does of course work at companies, and some of them could see how they could benefit from using my skills in their company.
That's really cool. And that's nice. That's nice to find out. Also, as far as diversifying and trying to share different content in different places, as well as increase your visibility, we kind of have an idea as to what has worked well for you. Now, as far as this activity, of course, it all takes time, of course. I guess now I'm curious to find out, how do you either balance or manage the time you spend on your business versus the time you spend in your business? And if that makes sense to you, you're only creating the content that you share for so much time, but then you're also spending a lot of time maintaining things like all of your sharing your images and your content publishing and communicating with people and creating tutorials and stuff. What's that breakdown look like for you?
Like how much time I spent on the different activities?
Yeah, if you just had to kind of guess or average.
I actually time track those things to be to have a clear visibility of what I'm doing with my time. And I mean, my tutorials, that's like 2 hours each week, and answering emails and that kind of stuff, getting new clients and things like that. That's more like 3 or 4 hours each week. And then I also spend like 5 to 7 hours on new skills, trying out new stuff. Could be new modeling techniques or new rendering stuff as well. And then I spend the rest of the time on doing actual jobs.
Okay.
And I also spend some hours on marketing, like doing blog posts or write something on LinkedIn.
Right. That makes sense. And that's impressive. That's really cool that you do track your time. Couple questions on that. What are you using to keep track of your time? And when did you decide or get the idea that would be a worthwhile thing to do?
Yep. I use just a simple Google Sheets document where I have my different tasks, and then I just every week. And then I use the Google Calendar where whenever I've spent 2 hours doing something, I write it in the calendar. And then there's a website that can collect your calendar into and count up the hours you have spent. And then just every Sunday, I go through the different tasks that I did this week and put it in my sheets.
Okay. So it is a pretty manual process. If you don't mind me asking, what's the service or the website that works off your calendar to
let me just check. It's called Google/calendar/hours.com.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that, so I wanted to make note of it. That's probably something we'll throw up in the show notes if that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So you're tracking your time and
Yep.
you're keeping track of all this. You got a clear understanding as to like where you are throughout the week, and then I'm sure you kind of make little adjustments each week as you go if you feel like if your time is maybe better allocated to one task or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I use it to get an understanding of how what I do relates to how many clients I get, or if I get new clients from it, and also to remember to do certain things. For example, I put in the task to learn new skills, and I have allocated 5 hours for that each week. So by doing that, I make sure that I steadily continue gaining new skills and getting better in between all the other stuff as well. Because I think that if you don't do that, or at least if I don't do that, I tend to forget to do different things that might not benefit your business like right away. But if you don't keep getting better than like a year ahead, it actually hurts your business if you haven't gotten any better.
Sure, that makes sense. And that's putting them on the calendar too, that's a great idea. Are you putting them on the calendar ahead of time and then setting them up as recurring so your calendar notifies you, hey, time for this?
Nope.
Or you're doing it the other way? You're logging it after you do it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, interesting.
Because it's sometimes you have meeting with clients and sometimes you have some Skype meetings. For me, it's tough to set like a fixed schedule ahead of time.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Totally.
Yeah.
Very cool. And as far as that, so you've got your whole, you're very methodical about this and everything, which is good. It sounds like that's been, having that structure has been a great way to keep pushing forward, growing, as you said, new skills and everything, which I think is awesome. I would love to say that I was spending 5 hours a week trying to push a new skill or test out something. That's awesome. What are a couple of the items that you've maybe over the past month or two, something that you've done recently or discovered new that was because you have that scheduled time to learn new stuff or work on new skills?
Yeah. What comes to mind is one of the things that I posted on Instagram, which was a jumping pear, some moto animation stuff, and also the brown clock animation that I did in Keyshot.
Oh yes,
it was also a thing that I did in that time. and also some hair system in Modo as well. I tried out, and the splash kit in Modo as well, where I did like this cookie falling into milk. Yeah, so sometimes it's something that I have never done before, like the hair system, and other times it's just trying to get better or more efficient doing what I already know how to do.
That makes sense. And as far as I'm aware, because I've seen all those posts, the Braun clock that you mentioned, as well as the cookie splash one and all that, like those have gotten, if I'm not mistaken, those have gotten a lot of attention for you, right? Like those have been some pretty strong pieces of content.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's almost always those kind of experimental projects for me that gets the most attention on my Instagram.
That's fantastic. And and as far as, and I also noticed, like, it looks like you have been kind of in one way or another almost collaborating with a few people as well.
Not sure what you're thinking of.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Like the couple of, like, you did the tea kettle and then the pair of earbuds too, which I guess getting involved a little bit more from like a community standpoint with some designs that were actually some other people's intellectual property, but then you kind of did your own version of those. You kind of rendered those out, modeled those up and everything. How did those come about?
Actually, I just I wanted to get better at modeling, so I went to Instagram and found some great guys really good at sketching, and I grabbed a few of them and used those as a reference for doing a model. And then I posted on Instagram, where I tagged the guys who did the designs and drawings and said that this is a model and rendering based on the design and sketch by this and this person. So it was not something that I asked for permission to do. I just made sure to reference the guys who did the design.
Sure. Well, that makes sense. I think too, though, like, again, what's been really nice with social media is that there has been a lot of, I think that there has been a good amount of community building and connection, whether it's across industries or people who are in similar industries, kind of building up that, I don't know, I feel like there's a good, healthy amount of camaraderie where people are encouraging and they like to see that type of thing where they're like, oh, that's cool that you like my work enough that you did your own thing that was inspired by it. Like, that's really cool. I think that's an interesting way to connect yourself with people and just, it benefits both of you. You kind of are giving credit saying, hey, this guy's got great stuff. Check it out,
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as far as doing the freelance work, I also have a couple more questions. The whole client thing. So you kind of mentioned that by doing that kind of work in the background and the prep work that you did while you were studying your master's degree, you were able to build a bit of a following, which is an awesome idea. Now, at this point, as you mentioned, you don't actively go seeking clients. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Not new clients. I might sometimes get in touch with previous clients and ask how they're doing and if they have some upcoming projects, but I'm not reaching out to people that I don't know.
That makes sense. Okay, cool. And as far as, so people are coming to you, they're like, hey, Esben, your work's great. I've got this idea, or maybe there's a project you can help me out on. And then what percentage of people who get in contact with you would you say that you actually end up completing a project for, if you had to guess?
50-50, I would guess. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, sure.
Well, cool. Now, as far as some of the previous projects you've done, I know you've worked with a few recognizable names. Does anything stand out as being, I know some of this too, you may not be able to speak about because of NDA topics, but is there anything that stood out as particularly interesting or challenging or fun that you'd feel like mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that I did for Fender was some quite fun projects, both in terms of the kind of project, but also because of the brand and the size of the brand.
Sure. Yeah, that's a big name. And
yeah, exactly.
How did you end up getting connected with that? Was that again just they reached out to you, just same as all your other work?
Yeah, I got an email from one of the creatives for the marketing department, saying that they have seen my stuff and if I were interested to help them out with a project.
Were you like ecstatic when you heard that? Did that surprise you?
I was like, that's a spam email, I guess. That's a weird email. That can't be true. I mean, I have had big clients, big companies in Denmark, but not like worldwide.
Sure.
Sized brands. So yeah, that was it was tough to answer that email. I was like, then I started to overthink what I should write back. Yeah, but it turned out good.
That's interesting. So at some point, did you think about saying no to them, or were you afraid that it was going to be too big to please them, or?
Yeah, I wasn't sure that I could pull it off in the quality that they were asking for. I mean, I have done some animation projects before, but not too much. So I was like, okay. But then I thought about, I mean, I've read a lot of books about dealing with clients and also being a freelancer and stuff like that. So I have read about a lot of experience where people have been afraid of taking the job because they didn't have the skill, they didn't feel like confident about it, but then just jumped into it and make it work. So I decided to just jump into it, and the worst that could happen is that I lost him as a client, but so what? I mean, no one would ever learn about that if that was about to happen.
Right, of course. And overall, I mean, as far as I'm aware, everything I'd seen, people responded really positively to those. That was really cool. Actually, the funny thing was when I was in Guitar Center a while ago, picking up some of the equipment for this podcast, I saw the in-ear monitors that you did the commercial for. Behind the counter, and I was like, "Hey, those look familiar. That's really cool." And so I pointed out to my girlfriend. I'm like, "I know the guy who did the commercial for those," and It was really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So that was. Would you say that's one of your biggest clients so far?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Well, that's awesome. And as far as the work you've done so far, what do you think has been the biggest challenge? I think the biggest challenge surrounding taking something that you enjoy doing and then turning it into what you do full time.
Yeah. There's always the thing about dealing with the opinions of clients as well. And like it's, when I did, that was something that surprised me when I started freelancing and doing stuff for clients, is that from being something just fun, it becomes something that another person actually has to be glad about, or they might have their own opinions about some stuff. And it gets a bit more complicated when you have a client that you do a rendering for.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's not all about you anymore, right? I mean, it's all about the person who's writing the check, and they need to be both pleased by the service you're providing as well as the deliverable, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they also always have a deadline that might be a challenge to comply with, but so that's another factor.
Would you say a majority of the people who reach out to you have really short deadlines, like they ask like less than a week before it's due or something like that?
Sometimes. I mean, it's worst with the animation jobs. I think people underestimate, or people who don't know about animation, how you do it, they don't know all the process that goes into it. But it is really time consuming to create an animation because there's just so many steps that needs to work out. So it's easy to underestimate the time needed for an animation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And animation has been quite. It seems like that's been a big one for you. Like I know a lot of people who do use KeyShot for rendering. If you just look at the amount of content that's out there, animations are not something that KeyShot is technically always known for. Although it's perfectly capable, and it as a render engine, it does really well. It's very fast. It creates very clean, not super noisy renderings, and that's great. But not a ton of people have really pushed it, and I think that's one thing that seems like it's really taken off for you. Like a lot of your content is animations. Is that something that you chose to do consciously, or is that something that you've just kind of been guided by the client work you've gotten, or what do you think that is?
It was something that I chose to do 1 year into my part-time freelancing. I thought that there was the amount of people doing still images for other companies, like freelancing still images, is there's a lot of more people doing that than people doing animations. So I thought that I could stand out by doing animations as well.
So it was part strategic.
Yeah, but also, I mean, part interest, because I think it's really fun to create animations and work with the camera movement and the lighting and all the stuff that needs to work together.
Absolutely. And the more you know about it and the more you have an appreciation for, film and all the moving parts, it seems like that's something that you get to play with at that point, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a natural next step when at a point I was tired of just doing just in citations. But I mean, when I got tired of doing still images, there's like an extra layer on animation projects.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah. And
as far as, so we all know, or most of us know, that animations are usually a bit more involved, especially when it comes to rendering them out. You're rendering a sequence of many, many still images. Yeah. Has your hardware setup had to change after putting a lot of time into animations or anything like that?
Nope. So far, I have been using render farms on the internet when rendering out an animation that was on a tight deadline. So, for example, this sugar skull animation that I did was like a self-initiated project with no deadline. So I used my own iMac for that. Mm-hmm. And I think it was rendering like, it was something like 120 hours for those 20 seconds of animation.
Yeah, that takes quite a while sometimes.
Yeah. It was cranking out day and night for a few days.
Sure. And as far as your experience with using a render farm service, you've generally, that's worked for you, right? Like that's been a pretty good experience. Has it gone smoothly or?
Yep. I've used the one called 3D Off the Page so far, and they are really great guys. I mean, I have been like getting in contact on beforehand because I knew that I was going to use them and ask, hey, do you have time to render next Monday or something? And then on the day I sent the files, and then like 4 hours after they sent the frames back.
Wow.
On a project that, for example, would have taken my own computer like a week to put out, because they have like 360 cores or something.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, I know they have a good reputation, so we'll definitely make sure to link them up too.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. So, it sounds like things are going well. You've got, you're fairly early, as you admitted, into the full-time freelance, but it seems like the snowball effect has kind of taken place, and you've gotten quite a bit of, you've gotten quite a decent-sized following who seems to be enjoying your content you're sharing. You're not having to go out looking for clients. They're more or less coming to you. That sounds like a freelancer's dream, honestly. That's really cool. So you mentioned earlier about reading up on books about freelancing or business and how to deal with clients. And it sounds like you're a big kind of, you're fairly strict or interested and disciplined about self-improvement and kind of taking the methodical approach. It sounds like you do your research. So given all that, do you want to mention any particular either books or pieces of media that you've found particularly helpful? I know you're a fairly big reader, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, lately I read a book called Deep Work. Don't remember the author right now.
Cal Newport?
Cal Newport.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, which is about how you like focus and spend your time the right way when you are working on something. So I really can recommend that one. What else? I haven't been reading too much lately the past few months, but yeah.
Well, that's fine. The one that you mentioned, Deep Work, I know you recommended that to me at some point, and I gave that a listen, and I really liked it. It was definitely, I think I read that, or I listened to it. I listened to that one, and I think that was shortly after I listened to Robert Greene's Mastery book, I think.
Yeah.
And the two of those complemented each other quite well. And the Cal Newport one, the Deep Work, that was really interesting because it really got at the heart of some things that I never really spent enough time considering. And I'm pretty sure that's the reason I deleted my Facebook about a month ago or so.
Okay.
For the second time, like just this whole like, what's getting in the way of me getting at the core of the stuff that's most important type deal.
Yeah, exactly.
How did that affect your work, or what was your reaction to reading some of those items?
I mean, one of the point that they sort of underline is that there's no overnight successes and no like natural talent it's only the natural talent that sort of does the job. I mean, you have to put in hours and hours and hours of concentrated work to really get better at something or to get something to work. And I think that's a good thing to have in the back of your mind when you are getting tired of doing something, that even though you're tired of doing it, you have just to keep pushing at some point if you want to success in a certain field. And I don't remember if it was Deep Work or Mastery, which I'm actually reading right now. There's a lot of good examples with great people from the past and how many years they spent on their skill before they actually had their breakthrough.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that is the Mastery one, where they're talking about like, there's like a famous boxer who became a boxing coach, and there's Leonardo da Vinci in there, and a woman who works in robotics and stuff like that. Yeah, those are really cool. Well, the other thing too is not just the amount of hard work or effort that goes into it or time, but like in the Deep Work one, I think one thing that was really interesting was it wasn't just the time spent, but it was the quality of the time, right? Like he says the depth of the time, like how exactly you're practicing, how focused are you, and how intense is that study. And
exactly.
And that's something that I don't think comes naturally to most people, and it's harder in the world that we have, where there's so many quick little pacifiers, right?
Exactly. Quick dopamine fixes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And notifications, and
yeah, that's definitely a great read. I really like that. It made me want to go like lock myself in a cabin somewhere and just hope to emerge like a month later with something profound.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was really cool. Yeah. Well, other than that, so you're a disciplined person. You kind of have your schedule that's sounds like it's floating, but you have your priorities, like how much time you spend doing certain activities. Is there anything else that you do that falls into the category of like a habit or a routine that you kind of rely on, or that you use to kind of get yourself in the mindset to do work on the days you don't feel like it?
Not really. I mean, there might be some days where I don't feel like doing any visual stuff, but then I can work on other parts of my my business. Then I might take a look at my website and see if that can be improved in some way, or I might have some accounting to do, or I mean, there's always something else I can do that sort of also needs to be done. The days where I'm not inspired to do any graphical.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Cool. Well, as far as the work that you're doing now, I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. You had the time that you were studying your master's degree, that you kind of gradually built up and kind of a plan to go freelance. Was there ever a time, or do you remember, I don't know if it was quick or if it was gradual, when you were studying either your product design and engineering degree, or if it was during the master's degree that you were working on, like when or what was the moment where you realized visualization or rendering in 3D work, that was something you wanted to actually try to do as a freelancer, as opposed to going to a company where you could do that as part of your daily job? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think the point was at some time when I was working at Velux, where I enjoyed doing the visualizations more than doing the actual product design, which I was hired to do. So there was like a point where I started to think that I probably should try to work it out in some ways, doing more visual stuff than the hardcore product design engineering.
Okay, and that was in your first job after
my bachelor.
Okay.
Yeah. And at that time, I put up a website saying like, hey, this is me, I want to do some renderings for you. And then just build it from there.
So as soon as you had the idea that the actual some of the other work you weren't quite as interested in, as soon as you realized that and accepted that, that's when you kind of threw up this page website as kind of a tester, right? Like to see if this might work.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah.
Cool. And then it just eventually grew, and the more you shared, the more stuff you got out there, the more confident you got. It just seemed like it validated itself over time. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it took this process of 2 to 3 years before it really took off where it is now. So yeah, in the beginning it was really slow. I had like one client in the first half year, but then it slowly picks up.
And are you at the point now of being busy to where you have to turn down jobs, or are you still basically able to accept most of like I know we said you take on about maybe 50% of the jobs that get pitched, but like as far as your schedule goes and how busy are you generally able to take on most of the ones that are a good fit?
Yep.
Okay.
For now I am. Yeah.
So anyone who hears this and wants to get in touch with Esben and wants to hire him, know that he's definitely possibly interested in your project.
Yep, that's true.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I mean, you shared a lot of information with us. It's been a good hour or so. At this point, I think, anyone who might be considering taking something that they enjoy doing and turning it into more than just a hobby, but like a full-on business and a freelance or maybe a freelance lifestyle, I have to believe they've learned a lot from this, and hopefully they're feeling pretty pumped and encouraged by this, because I really like your story. I think it's pretty inspiring that, you were patient, you had faith in the process, and you just chipped away at it day after day after day, and it seems like it's really working quite well. Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway from my experience is that, something that I experienced that people like underestimate is how patient you need to be and how much time you need to like how much time it really takes to get things off the ground from the first day the website is up till you get like a great or a good amount of clients coming in.
Absolutely. Yep. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I had that. I worked with that for a couple of years, and I ended up switching to the job I have now probably right before things were getting busy. And I know that from my own personal experience, that sounds very close to what I experienced too. So it's patience is a big thing. One other question here, while we're still on the subject, if you had to do this again, like let's say you got this idea that, okay, I want to be a renderer, or I want to do 3D work and be kind of this 3D specialist. If you were at that conclusion and you had to start all over again without a website, without any followers or anything, what's the one thing or maybe a couple things you can think of you might do a little bit differently that you now know could have sped the process up a bit?
I think actually sharing stuff with other people who wants to, or I mean, all the things with sharing this newsletter and then doing tutorials is something that I just started doing the past year. And that's something that I would like to have started earlier if I could. Yeah, it just fits into your business in another way than your freelance clients does. And it also helps you to gain this respect, or it adds a layer to your brand.
What are you most looking forward to this next year?
I have one goal that is to do like an in-depth keyshot tutorial that I'm putting up for sale for a few bucks at some point. And I'm looking forward to see how that goes, and how many people are interested in that, and if that's something that can be another income for my business as a support for the regular client work. That's the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to.
Cool. That will be really fun. And I know based on the feedback, I think that I've seen online that people have stated when they see your work, I think that there's a lot of people who will be looking forward to that and who will take advantage of that when that becomes available. For those who need to connect to you or want to connect to you online, where should they go?
Instagram at Esben Oxholm or esbenoxholm.dk.
So your website and your Instagram, those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure I link those up as well.
Cool. And also my YouTube channel, of course.
That's right.
Which is also Esben Oxholm.
Cool.
So everything / Esben Oxholm.
Awesome. That's easy. I'll make sure to link those up so people know how they can get a hold of you, okay?
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's good.
Well, thanks, man. Again, I appreciate it, and take care.
You too.
And there you have it. That was awesome. It was really fun getting to learn a little bit about Esben's journey. Hopefully any of you guys who've been following him online enjoyed hearing a little bit more about his story, getting inside his head and learning about how he's built a business doing something that he really enjoys and kind of how he goes about that. Maybe it will give some of you guys who have that idea in the back of your head a little bit of a push to get going on your own journey. Also, before I close this out, I want to mention that you can get the show notes for this episode. You can find links to the stuff that Esben might have mentioned, as well as connect with him on the website. The URL will be cgipodcast.com/episode/3. And that will be Esben's episode. Please remember to subscribe and rate the show. And if you've never subscribed or left a rating or review on iTunes, you should change that today. The more reviews the show gets, the larger the audience will grow. So please help support the CGI podcast, and I'll keep cranking out new episodes. Remember, if you like to connect with today's guest, Esben, head over to the cgipodcast.com and check out the show notes for today's episode. Until next time, this is Will Gibbons signing off.